Here.
All present, Your Honor.
Thank you. Purpose of this working session, of course, no formal business will be conducted, is to give a overview of the city's sanitary sewer system upgrade project. And with that, Dennis, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I appreciate you taking the extra time tonight to sit through this working session to kind of get an idea of what's before us, especially at tonight's meeting. We've come a long way over the last 3 to 4 years in getting to the stage that we're at right now, evaluating our current wastewater treatment facilities, putting together a plan to figure out what we're going to do to rehab these facilities. We've gotten to that point where we now have completely bid this project, and we're ready to issue the notice of intent to award the contract to move forward. Our financing is in place. Everything is done up to this point. So what I'm going to do is defer this to Pat Sheridan with Farnsworth. Him and his guys are here to kind of give you an overview of the 3 legs of the project that we're doing now, possibly the 4th leg that's coming in about a year to 18 months from now, and then answer any questions you guys may have on this entire project, and then move forward so that you're aware of anything you got. Hopefully we still have plenty of time with any questions you may have. Pat?
Thank you. I'm an engineer. My mouth is best in the closed position, so forgive me. I've got my 2 compatriots here to correct me if I'm getting a little bit offline. I don't have a presentation for you today because we're not really at a presentation point. We're at a point of decision in a fairly long process. I'm in my 3rd generation now of public works staff since I've been here, and 2 generations into this project. It's taken 16 years to get to the point and the juncture and decision that you're at today. So I would respectfully ask that you be mindful of a long history to get to this point. I wouldn't say it's been a very hard road, but it's been a necessary road. Quick overview. The project consists of 3 major components. Plant number 1 on Cass Street, plant number 3 out on Route 150, and then an interconnecting pump station between the 2. They are 2 separate drainage basins, and there is a pump station that allows you to shift flows from the lower drainage basin, which is plant number 1, up to plant number 3. East Peoria's wastewater infrastructure has 3 problems. Capacity to the least degree, and capacity is only relevant to growth, or if a major business wanted to come into the area. The second problem is regulations are changing. Effluent into the Illinois River is a different thing. BNR regulations are hitting Illinois hard. They're hitting everybody. It's nothing unique to the city. It's unique. It's not unique to the nation. Illinois is a little bit behind the curve, and so there are lots of regulation things in flux, but there are significantly tightening regulations that are hitting everybody. And in your case, it's the near term is phosphorus. You already have interim permits that are suggesting you're going to get to a phosphorus standard of 0.5 milligrams per liter on a geometric mean. That's the reduce Gulf of Mississippi hypoxia. I think Illinois is about a 45% contributor from the 45% of the state's phosphorus load comes from wastewater plants. So wastewater plants are on the hook. A secondary nutrient standard is going to be nitrogen, and I think the EPA is moving towards a 10 milligram per liter total nitrogen. So effluent standards, water quality, and the last one is condition. Of those 3, the driving force for your project is condition. Over those 16 years, your public works staff has done a remarkable job, absolutely keeping things running, keeping it going, keeping it going, keeping it going. Rates stayed relatively flat over all that time. It was very efficient, very effective, but it's the kind of effectiveness where you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're doing so well that you're hurting yourself. And so now the infrastructure is nearing a state of failure. There is stuff out there that is heading into the ground. That was the impetus for 2 years ago. We came before council after meeting with commissioners and meeting with the city manager at the time, and decided after 14 years it was time. The need was there. The regulations are driving and bringing the underlying fact that the infrastructure is in serious need of help to the forefront. So at that point, council took it on and made the hard choice. There was a preliminary rate structure put in place to figure out how this would do to be able to capitalize things. And what I really like about what you guys did is you had the foresight at that point to look forward, even beyond this project, and what level of reasonable capitalization would be needed to carry this forward into the future so you don't face this again 50 years from now or something like that. I think you took a leadership role and did that. And I brought this thing along just for reference as I get into as I close. So we went into the design, and the design, the only thing I want to point out as far as design is you have two wastewater plants and this interconnecting pump station. And our thought was, what can we do to maximize the use of what you have and minimize the overall cost? And one of the first things we came up with is this concept of load shifting, which is moving flow from one place to another. You've got 7 million gallons of storage available already right now at plant number 3. We're improving the storage at plant number 1, which is 4 million. So that's 11 million gallons of storage. It costs like $3 million per million gallon of wastewater infrastructure construction and development. Well, if you've got 11 million gallons of storage, that's a $33 million offset in infrastructure cost. Why build treatment to chase that if you can use the storage to hold it and then trickle it back later on into the capacity that you have? So that's what drove the Route 8 pump station project. New pump station, new force main, to consistently every day lift flows out of the Plant 1 basin to Plant number 3 and maximize its use, because it's currently totally underutilized. The residential flows don't reach its capacity, and for a number of reasons, flows have been shifted over the years to Plant number 1. Plant number 3 is only being upgraded, that is not upgraded, renovated to current standard, with the idea that those renovations are adaptable to a plant expansion in the future, which would double its capacity. In the early stages of the project, it was decided not to pay for that expansion because you really didn't have the population base or the flows yet to do so. It does put flows over there up against the EPA margins, but they played ball and saw the logic in that. And so as the community grows and that service area develops out, the need for that subsequent project would become necessary. And your capitalization plan has that built in. When that's going to occur, we don't know. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, who knows? But there's no sense in spending money now for something you might not need for another 15 years. Utilizing that extra capacity at plant number 3 reduces the stress on plant number 1, and therefore, along with the storage, reduce the total amount of improvements in terms of capacity upgrade we had to do at plant number 1. Plant number 1 has a locked footprint. There's a fence around it. All the land around it is owned by CAT or somebody else. There's no room to make it bigger. So as part of our design upgrade, we're beefing some additional capacity into it, but we're building it into existing reactors. We're just extending the footprint where we can to kind of shoehorn things in and get what we can out of plant number 1. Okay, that whole thing, those concepts went to the EPA 3 years ago in a facility planning study. We completed the facility planning study, and after council approval of the budget, we went into the design. We've been designing for 2 years. We finished designing last November for 3 phases of the project, which is essentially half of plant number 1, all of plant number 3, and all of Route 8. Why half of plant number 1? Because of the capacity increase, the EPA has to do what they call a National Pollution Elimination Discharge Permit. And they weren't ready to issue that permit at the time of design. They still have not issued it. So that is the Phase D component of the project that Dennis alluded to that is yet to come. And it's designed, it's ready to go. It's in line for the loan funding program. It's in your budgeted schedule. It's in the time schedule. We need the permit to proceed. So I anticipate that needs to happen roughly about 9 months after we start this one, if we do start this one, to kind of help things go into phase so that impacts can be kind of overlapping on plant number one. That's really the gist of it. We've taken bids. That's the next step. Oh, one more thing before that. We have Corps of Engineer permits. We have negotiations completed with CAT on their properties and the effluent permit. We have what's that water district over there? I can't remember.
The sanitary district.
Yeah, we have permits from them, Corps, US EPA, property owners, on and on and on. Illinois Historic sign-off, EcoCats. The permitting process was huge. We have, your project is in line for EPA funding. I'm confident that you will get an EPA loan for this, which I think is running this year 1.87% or something like that. Payable bi-monthly over a 20-year term with payments starting roughly 6 months after construction. Biannually, excuse me, we've capitalized it on a bi-monthly schedule, but it's a biannual, right?
Is it after construction is completed or begins?
6 months after construction is completed,
Okay.
is when the annual payments start. The city has done a low interest loan program before, but in a smaller scale than this. Okay, all that being said, we received authorization from the EPA to bid the project, and we did that. That bidding occurred about a month ago or so, April 26th, after a 45-day bidding process. And that's the juncture we're at right now. We had 3 major general contractors bid on it, Williams Brothers and River City, the 2 premier contractors in this area. I would say bid on this thing is about as aggressively as I've ever seen those 2. We have a long history with both of them on many, many projects. A 3rd bidder came out of Superior, Portage, Indiana, Superior Construction, but their numbers were like 12 million above either of your two locals. Okay, bids came in, and the bid prices were split into 2 components. One component was for the Route 8 force main, sort of an underground piping work, 11,000 feet of force main up the ridge, and the rest of it was a lump sum bid for the Plant 1, Plant 3, and the pump station in Route 8. Excuse me, I have to consult my notes here for a second. The force main bids came out about 44% under budget, which was good news. And the subcontractor that bid that, we're familiar with them, Stark Excavating, is notoriously a very aggressive bidder and contractor. We've done quite a bit of work with them, and there are challenges therein, but they are certainly qualified, and they wanted the work and went at it aggressively. The remaining lump sum portion of the project was 21% above bids, which is not my personal standard, and so I wanted to be honest to the board. We took a look at what happened there and why is that the case. And we can say that about 60% of the cost is associated with items that we did not include in the estimate in the last phase of the project. Shortly before bid, I updated the cost estimate, and my team helped me too. We updated pipe pricing, we updated this, we updated that. We did quite a bit of work, but there were negotiations that happened in the late project phase with Ameren and IP on the utility services. So the exterior electrical switchgear didn't get added back in. During the design, we did geotechnical borings, and the soils at both sites are, I don't want to say that, they're about as bad as it gets. So there was more concrete, thicker footings, some over-excavation and that kind of thing necessary, and we did not add that back into the numbers. That's the bulk of it. Beyond that, when you have 2 shops of that caliber bidding that hard on a project local to their operations, where their people live and work, I have to conclude that their bids, which were within $500,000 or so one another, are really reflective of what it's going to cost to do this. That, in addition with what Stark put in on it. So, on the basis of that review, I have written a letter of recommendation to Dennis, suggesting that this project is at market price. I don't see value in rebidding it. We have another project that is active, that was bid before this one, and there's another one right now being bid, and the same group of bidders are attacking that one, as viciously. So what I mean by that is that, market conditions are probably going to change. So if we wait, if we choose not to take this, or if the council chooses not to take this, I don't know the pricing will improve in the fall or something like that. I can tell you with confidence there is zero fluff in this project. It is pure machines, tanks, concrete, reactors, basic stuff needed to run a wastewater plant, to deal with the capacity adjustments, and to meet those effluent standards that are known and are, how do I call them? They're known unknowns. We know there's going to be some more nitrogen stuff, and beyond that, we even have a contingency, should it come to that, with some polymer addition that could be done at the very end of it. So in conclusion, and in summary, I want to just remind of the IEPA permitting process. We finished design in November. The agency didn't give us authorization to bid until, what was it, February, late February? And then there was a 45 bid period, and whilst we were reviewing the bids, I also sent the documentation up to the EPA to say, the council has not approved this yet. If they do go forward, I would appreciate it if you continue your work so we don't lose more time. And if they choose not to go forward, then we'll just, push it off to the side and regroup and do what's necessary there. And they were amenable to that. And that led to the letter that Dennis had received, or one of the commissioners received, saying that you are authorized for loan funding up to $42 million, which is the project at the low bid with engineering fees, permitting fees, and all the other fees that occurred up to this point. Let me clear that a little bit. The EPA nowadays allows you to recover your engineering design and construction costs as part of the loan. But they apportion it to the portion of the project that's active. So since there's a component of Phase D we haven't done yet, all of those fees are not included. Some of those would go over to Phase D. But the bulk of the project funds are in this major component, so most of it is covered in this first one. I think they also add construction interest into it, right? We got a letter which deals with interest during the time that you're not paying back the loan for the 2.5 years. We're looking about a 2.5 or so, maybe 3-year chunk for this first piece, and there's another 1.5 or so, maybe 2 after that. So it's a 5-year program. The initial plan had it spread out over 5-6 years with a year in between, which moved the capitalization out further, but it moved the risk out further. Early on, council and staff decided, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to take this by the horns, and moved everything forward. We would have Phase D in this bid if we could, if it wasn't for the EPA holding us back. So, in terms of the process, you now have a bid before you. I think it's qualified. I think the low bidder is quite capable of doing this work. When I say this work, it's construction of a new plant on top of the active footprint of an existing plant that has to operate while it's going on. It's a whole different ballgame than building a new one right next door. And during the pre-bid, I was really interested to see what contractor depth would show up at the meeting, because it's very important that somebody has the moxie to take on something of that level of complexity. So I was very happy to see both River City and Williams at the table. So anyway, Williams was successful in the low bid. I think I'd be comfortable in recommending them. The EPA